Venezuela firmly and categorically rejects the U.S. designation of the non-existent Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization and the rehashing of a lie to justify intervention. Mexico warns of a possible invasion of its embassy in Peru following statements by Peruvian President José Geri. And the Israeli army killed 4 Palestinians and left several injured in separate attacks on civilian areas in the Gaza Strip on Monday. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro highlighted the participation of the Venezuelan people in the 4th Public Consultation 2025. The Venezuelan president congratulated the community leaders and the record turnout at the event, in which 5,336 community circuits from across the country participated. In this regard, Maduro emphasized that the people clearly expressed their power, conscience, and commitment by choosing their community projects with the goal of receiving immediate solutions without intermediaries. The 4th public consultation was held as part of the 7 transformations promoted by the executive for the welfare of the population. Also in Venezuela, the country hosted the World Symposium of Neighborhoods with the participation of international representatives. At the Teresa Carreño Theater in the capital city, Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez led the opening of the Congress, which welcomed international guests such as Japanese architect Riken Yamamoto and other special guests. The purpose of this meeting was to develop and deepen the guidelines for the transformation of communities within the framework of popular participation and self-determination of peoples. During the opening of the event, Rodriguez described as ridiculous the designation by the United States of the non-existent Cartel de los Soles as a terrorist organization.
Rubio, ustedes saben, sacó otro refrito.
Today, Marcos Rubio released another rehash claiming that the Cartel de los Soles is now a terrorist organization. Ridiculous. They are ridiculous, repeating themselves over and over again, and that is why they are failing. What a joke. This drug trafficking story. What drug trafficking? If they really wanted to combat the drug trafficking, they would have to go to Ecuador and look for it in the presidency of the Republic, which has the main company for exporting cocaine to the world, hidden in its factories for distributing bananas and plantains. 70% of the cocaine exported comes from Ecuador.
And the Venezuelan government strongly rejected on Monday the new threats and aggression from the United States government. In an official statement shared by Foreign Minister Iván Gil, the Bolivarian government emphasized it categorically, firmly, and absolutely rejects the new and ridiculous hoax by the Secretary of State of the United States of America, Marcos Rubio, who designates the non-existent Cartel of the Suns, Cartel de los Soles, as a terrorist organization, thus repeating an infamous and vile lie to justify an illegitimate and illegal intervention against Venezuela under the classic U.S. format of regime change. Moreover, Caracas assured this new maneuver will follow the fate of previous and recurring attacks against our country, failure, adding that the Venezuelan people are more united and cohesive than ever, attending to national life in all its dimensions and looking forward to the Christmas festivities. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela thus urged the U.S. government to rectify this erratic policy of aggression and threats which is strongly rejected by the U.S. people themselves, affects the development of the Caribbean peoples, and in no way contributes to a true and genuine fight against illicit drug trafficking. In this context, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America also rejected the lies and slander of the U.S. State Department against Venezuela. In an official statement, ALBA categorically rejects the latest action by the U.S. State Department, which designates the non-existent Cartel of the Suns as a terrorist organization and falsely links it to the Venezuelan state in order to justify an aggression against the South American country and force a change of government. ALBA added that the U.S. policy of aggression and threats against the sister nation of Venezuela has been overwhelmingly and almost unanimously rejected by the international community, as well as by a broad sector of world public opinion, including the majority of the U.S. people who have spoken out in favor of peace and against new interventionist adventures. ALBA reaffirms its unconditional support for the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, led by President Nicolás Maduro, and reiterates its commitment to truth, peace, and the sovereignty of peoples. And in this context, we go to the U.S. Citizens have expressed their discontent with the Trump administration's threats and military actions against Venezuela. A new CBS News govt poll shows that 70% of U.S. citizens are opposed to any military action in Venezuela. The survey, which took place between November 19th and the 21st, also showed that 76% of respondents said that the White House has not yet made clear its intentions against the Bolivarian nation. Meanwhile, 75% demanded transparency rather than action and bombs, and are therefore calling on the Trump administration to show the vessels that were attacked and allegedly carried drugs. Regarding Venezuela's situation in the face of the constant threats from the United States, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum spoke out against interference and interventionism and in favor of self-determination for peoples as well as the peaceful resolution of conflicts.
You know our opinion, and also the constitutional opinion, because that is what our Constitution says. We will always be in favor of self-determination for people's peaceful resolution of any conflict, and non-interference and non-intervention. We do not agree with that. Therefore, dialogue and peace must always guide us.
Entonces, el diálogo y la paz siempre deben guiarnos.
And on Sunday, from the port of Veracruz, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also called on the people to be alert to defend the integrity of the nation against any attempt at foreign interference. During her speech at the ceremony commemorating 200 years of Mexican independence, the head of state noted that conservative sectors of the country have historically resorted to seeking support beyond their borders. Let's recall that in recent months, conservative sectors in Mexico and the United States have been pressuring for what they called a more aggressive response to drug trafficking. In this scenario, the president took advantage of a historical recount to point out that interventionist aspirations have been part of the strategy of certain political sectors in the country.
El domingo.
And on Sunday, several Democratic congressmen confirmed that they had sought protection from law enforcement agencies after receiving death threats following accusations of sedition by U.S. President Donald Trump. According to statements made to various media outlets, some legislators have filed criminal complaints because they and their families have received death and bomb threats after President Donald Trump arbitrarily charged them with the crime of sedition. This happened after several democratic lawmakers urged members of the armed forces to not obey illegal orders in reference to the deployment of military contingents in several states of the country and also in the Caribbean, especially off the coast of Venezuela. In this scenario, the head of state suggested that this congressman should be executed, hanged or arrested. And now we have a short break coming up. We'll be right back, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We go to Mexico. The country warns of a possible invasion of its embassy in Peru following statements by Peruvian President José Herrí. President Claudia Sheinbaum condemned Lima's provocative actions against her embassy for granting asylum to former Peruvian Chief of Staff Betsy Chávez. The head of state argued that the right to asylum is recognized by international law and therefore interfering in her diplomatic space would constitute a violation. Peruvian President José Herrí threatened to force his way into the Mexican embassy, as happened in Ecuador in 2024. Also on Sunday, Honduran President Xiomara Castro arrived in Mexico to begin an official visit and meet with her counterpart, Claudia Sheinbaum. This is the Honduran president's second visit to Mexico since she attended the inauguration of her counterpart on October 1st, 2024. During her stay, the two heads of state are expected to address key issues on the bilateral agenda, such as migration, economic cooperation, regional development, and environmental challenges affecting both countries. According to the Foreign Ministry, Mexico and Honduras seek to strengthen common goals focused on cooperation, development, and coordinated actions in the region, issues that will be discussed in detail during the high-level meeting. In other news, on Monday, the Supreme Court of Brazil unanimously confirmed the preventive detention of former President Jair Bolsonaro due to the repeated violations of precautionary measures. In this scenario, Ministers Alexandre de Moraes, Flavio Dino, Cristiano Zanin, and Carmen Lucia voted in favor of maintaining the detention. In this regard, the Minister de Moraes cited the flight risk and the violation of the electronic ankle bracelets as reasons for the decision. In addition, the Minister reiterated that there is no doubt about the need to convert house arrest into preventive detention, citing the need to guarantee public order and ensure the application of criminal law. Bolsonaro has been detained at the federal police headquarters in Brasilia since Saturday after the identification of a flight risk. In other news, on Sunday, Colombian authorities reported the rescue of 17 minors linked to the Orthodox Jewish sect Leftahor in Antioquia, in the northwest of the country. The Colombian authorities indicated that there were international alerts for possible crimes committed against children within this community. They also stated that some of the minors have been kidnapped, which would open up the possibility of a case of human trafficking under religious protection. Leftahor, founded in the 1980s, has been investigated in several countries. For example, in December 2024, more than 160 children linked to the cult were rescued in Guatemala, and several of its members are facing legal proceedings for crimes including human trafficking and other offenses. Now we go to Spain. On Monday, Spain's Attorney General Álvaro García Ortiz resigned after the Supreme Court found him responsible for leaking the tax fraud confession of the partner of the President of the Community of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso. In a letter, the prosecutor stated that his decision came from profound respect for judicial rulings and claimed to have served with loyalty and a commitment to public service. His departure leaves uncertainty as two who will definitely assume the headship of the prosecutor's office, while responsibility temporarily falls to the deputy prosecutors of the Supreme Court, Maria Ángeles Sánchez Conde. The sentence, which includes 2 years of disqualification and a financial fine, keeps the prosecutor's career in suspense while the full text of the sentence is awaited. Now we have a second short break coming up. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more from the South. Welcome back to From the South. China denounced Japan's plans to deploy missiles on an island near Taiwan. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning says the plan is a deliberate attempt to create regional tension and trigger a military confrontation. Let's listen.
Japan's deployment of offensive weapons on the southwestern islands adjacent to Taiwan is a deliberate attempt to create regional tension and provoke military confrontation. Coupled with Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's erroneous remarks on Taiwan, this trend is extremely dangerous and warrants high vigilance from neighboring countries and the international community.
We stay in China. On Sunday, the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region authorities announced the immediate suspension of all official contacts with the Consulate General of Japan, as well as the cancellation of a student exchange program. The decision comes after the Japanese government issued statements suggesting the possible use of force in the event of tensions related to Taiwan. These statements were considered by the Hong Kong authorities to be interferential and a source of regional uncertainty. The measure also includes the suspension of economic forums and high-level meetings, as well as new security alerts and adjustments to educational programs. The Hong Kong government also reported that it will evaluate new restrictions if external pressure on Taiwan intensifies. Now let's talk about Palestine. On Monday, the Israeli army killed 4 Palestinians and left several injured in separate attacks on civilian areas in the Gaza Strip on Monday. The Palestinian authorities warned about new violations of the ceasefire deal established on October 10th. The number of fatalities has exceeded 340 since that date, and in this context, south of the Gaza Strip, Zionist forces attacked a group of Palestinians with drones, killing 2 young people. Meanwhile, in northern Gaza, 2 other people were targeted by Zionist fire. The Israeli offensive continues to devastate the enclave, already reduced to rubble after 2 years of continuous attacks. And on Monday, thousands of Lebanese marched in the city of Beirut to condemn Israel's ongoing aggression against the country. The protesters gathered on Hamra Street in the capital to denounce U.S. interference in the country's affairs and to reject the violation of the agreement reached with Israel in 2024. The participants reaffirmed their right to resistance by raising their voices against Israel's aggression and violation, and warned as well of the real danger of occupation. In this regard, they emphasized that the armed struggle of the resistance is the main shield of sovereignty in the country. Let's recall that the protest followed an Israeli airstrike on the southern suburbs of Beirut on Sunday that killed Hezbollah senior commander Haytham Ali Tabatai, along with several other people. Meanwhile, on Monday, Egyptians voted in the second phase of parliamentary elections as authorities annulled first-round results in about 2 dozen constituencies over alleged violations. The first stage of voting took place November 10th and 11th in 14 provinces, including Gaza and the Mediterranean port city of Alexandria. Regarding this first round, there were widespread reports of violations, prompting President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to order a review of the incidents. A total of 568 seats in the lower chamber are up for grabs, with over 2,500 candidates running as independents, and with a new parliament set to be sworn in before the current chamber's term expires in January. And also in Guinea-Bissau, the vote count is underway following the presidential and legislative elections held on Sunday. In this scenario, President Umaro Sissoko Embalo is seeking a second term. Embalo is a former army general who came to power in 2021 and has the backing of a political coalition of more than 20 groups. If he wins, Embalo would become the first president in 3 decades to achieve re-election in Guinea-Bissau. There are 12 candidates competing in the election, and to win, a candidate needs more than 50% of the votes. Otherwise, a runoff election will be held. Let's recall that the election process is taking place amid tensions caused by multiple coup attempts in the country. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief for teleSUR English. I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.